So what was I going to say? So no, I know Jodie, there was somebody else staying there. I don't know if you're still in touch with Jodie, are you?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And I think it was another girl, but I have no idea. But we definitely met. I remember meeting various things. So I was stayed with Joe and Amelia, and you and Jodie, and is it Mari as
yeah.
well who was
The
there?
South
Yes, went
African
down there. There was
girl.
you were all, giving us a bit of insight into your world of training for us sort of mere
Right.
mortals. And we definitely did. I remember I think you led a swim session actually at the
Oh,
pool.
right.
You probably,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think I remember because we had some like joint stuff together with Joe and Amelia. Like they had a camp or something, and
That's
we
right.
jumped into it. But
Yeah.
I also I missed 1 year, the first year when Annie was there as well. I wasn't training with the group. I think that was 2013 maybe, and I came in like
Okay.
a little bit later. So I think I was there
Yeah.
15th and 16th, maybe 14th as well.
Okay.
But we all
Okay.
like stayed. We had like slightly various schedules, and at one stage I was up by myself in Avorias, and the other ones were down, depending on what
Okay.
races you had.
Depending
And
on your racing and what you're,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So where are you now? You're in Girona now, are you?
Girona for a
Yes.
training camp.
Yes.
Um, it's like it's no altitude, but it's nice spring weather, and at the moment it's a bit like a triathlon mecca. There's so many people who
Fantastic. All
moved here, basically.
professionals, is
Yeah,
it? Yeah,
you
yeah.
have Vincent Louis, Taylor Spivey, Joel Filial's group is doing a lot of training down here.
Okay.
So when you're at the pool, there's so many good people in there,
Wow. So
and then you
good.
have all the cyclists as well, the professional cyclists.
Okay, so amazing competitive atmosphere there as well, and to also
Mm.
train against each other.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
very inspiring, like to have that
Yeah.
many good athletes around.
Yeah, fantastic. So when do you go back? Where do you go after that? Do you back to Sweden?
Then I go back to Sweden. It's a nice mixture. Like with long distance, you don't need the group as much as with a short course.
Hmm.
Darren, and when you do the short course stuff, it's all about the dynamics, and you have to be engaged in the race and jump on things that happens in a race. With
Yeah,
long course, it's more like you have to let it go, and you
yeah,
just focus on yourself and follow your plan.
yeah.
And then when I'm back in Sweden doing a lot of training by myself, that's very good for that kind of training. And
Hmm.
every once in a while, it's nice to be reminded of how fast people are and where the
Yes,
level is
yeah,
at.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So what's your first race you've got coming up, or your sort of A race of this year, perhaps?
So the A race is Ironman Nice, the
Okay. Oh,
Ironman
right.
World
Yes. In
Championships.
September.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And then we have like an Ironman Pro Series
Okay.
with a big bonus at the end. So I look into doing the races that's within the Ironman Pro Series umbrella.
Okay. So that in itself, so because one of the things, so just to sort of for people
Mm.
who listen to this, I mean, you're an ex-Olympic silver medalist, you ITU world champion, you've got a whole many list of accomplishments. What particularly interests me as a nutritionist, working very holistically, is you did have burnout. Is that right? Would you officially say that, or you?
Not like an official burnout, because I would never myself had put that label on it.
Okay.
But I had years and years of struggles, and like backward spiral when you're trying so hard to move forward and get out of the negative spiral, and instead just
Mm,
dig yourself deeper, and you're not getting healthy, you're not getting injury
yeah,
free, but you're
yeah.
putting in 110% effort into trying to become healthy and injury
Yeah.
free.
So what I do want to do in a minute is really
Yeah.
sort of ask more about that, which it fascinates me, and how you recognized it, what you did, and how you've maybe changed nutrition, lifestyle. But just coming, what you were saying about the Ironman series. So how many Ironman, because obviously an Ironman, whether you're a pro or an age group or anyone, is really demanding on the body. How many do you do in that series, and how do you recover from that as well?
So for the series, you have to do, or you probably have to do 3 full distance Ironman races,
Okay.
because you can count your best 3 scores, and you
Okay.
get double amount of points compared to a 70.3.
Okay.
So then obviously you will have to do 3. That's including Nice as well. So it's
Okay.
basically Nice plus 2 more. Last year I did 4 Ironmans.
I read that, yes. And
Uh,
I feel that was achieved. Was that not easy, but you had enough recovery, and do you feel?
yeah, I think so, because I had the first one was in Roth, that was in June. Then I did Kalmar in August,
Yeah.
Kona in October, and then
Okay.
Ironman Western Australia in December. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like nicely spread out.
Yeah. So
Maybe Ironman Western Australia was maybe one too much.
yeah.
Out of a body perspective, it took me the longest to recover afterwards. And that's probably carrying fatigue from the whole season into the last race, and
I bet.
mentally also letting go afterwards.
Yeah. The mental side of it is massive.
But
Um,
my HRV was down for like 4 weeks before it
wow.
got back into the green zone.
Okay, because that's something actually I was going to ask you about, as you've mentioned it, I'll ask now. But do you measure HRV on a daily basis? Is that something you adjust your training on based on what that
So
what
it's like
number
that
is?
kind of tags into a bit of the theme for tonight.
Yeah.
So going back to the old days doing short course, we
Mm,
had very little tools, right?
yeah.
And I think in the last 5 years, we have so much more ability to measure stuff that's health related. So with the Aura rings, the Whoop,
Yeah.
Garmin has so many new algorithms, and it picks up sleep and naps and stress
I'm not
and
sure I trust Garmin very much. Do you?
no. So I used to I had a Garmin in the beginning, and
Yeah.
then one of my training partners was working with Whoop, and I was like, well, do I need to pay extra for the data that Garmin probably still has and gathers? And I get it, if I look at, I have the HRV and I have the heart rate, but then when I tried Whoop, it's just, I think it's a bit more reliable, and it packages the algorithm kind of nice for a nice overview of the complete system.
Hmm.
So you have your training load, your recovery part, your sleep, and it's easy to kind of view and take into consideration. Still, it's a guidance that I look at, but I don't let that decide my day. So my feeling would always overweigh the numbers.
Okay.
And I actually had a lot of times where I'm sick, like I have action and I feel horrible. And
Mm.
my group is like 99% recovered. Go for it. And it's like, no, I feel like crap.
Yeah. So will
um,
you miss it? So obviously you have a planned sort of training week, month, year, as it were. Will you miss sessions if your heart rate, if your HRV is low,
it
or
all
can you
depends on
feel
my
based on how you feel?
yeah. So it's the same when I was working with Darren and doing short course. We took a lot of parameters ourselves. So we took the morning heart rate. We noted down scores like stress levels, soreness, fatigue, sleep quality, everything that basically you have in the book today.
Yeah.
But it was a bit more manual work. And we would bring the numbers to Darren in the morning, and then we would like put that into the big picture with, okay, what sessions did we do yesterday? What's on the schedule today?
Mhm.
How do you look in the eyes? Like what's the feeling of the athlete? And I think that's still how I work today. So if I feel good, but I have bad numbers, I wouldn't be like, oh, whoa, I'm going to take it easy today.
Yeah.
Then I would like go with the flow and do whatever session is planned. If I would feel bad and have 2-3 days of bad numbers, then I'm like, actually, I'm not recovering here. There's something that's a bit off. I think I need a bit more recovery or air in the program tomorrow. And I would
Mm.
talk to the coach about that. So
Okay.
it's never out of like a one morning reading. It's about like a 2-3 day together with my feeling and the plan. And
Yeah. Not
obviously if you're training for an Ironman event and you train really hard,
mm.
you're not going to get great numbers. You
Yeah.
are going to be detraining yourself, and you're going to be stressed and fatigued, and that's going to show up in bad numbers.
Mm.
So at some stage you want bad numbers because you don't want to be
You've got to get
recovered
that
and
training
awesome
back.
every day.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes. So going back, so was it 2020 where you felt, you're working hard, but you weren't getting the results? Was that the year that was difficult?
No, it's actually 2012. That was Olympic year, and that
Okay.
was a great year for me.
Yeah.
Leading into 2012, I had a lot of minor injuries, so we
Mm.
were always like cotton padding me a little bit with everything and being very careful in the management going into the Olympics. And I had a lot of injuries in the preseason. And it was basically only after the Olympics that I managed to string together a long period of time going into the grand final where I was injury free and healthy and I could race really well. Looking back to the knowledge I have today of the demands, I think we're always underfueled.
Okay.
So this is like the early days where sports drinks and nutrition wasn't as big as it is today. Today it's all about training your gut and, you know, trying to get as many carbs as you can per hour in for the races. Back then we were like, well, your session is only 2 hours and you just had breakfast, you don't need to eat anything. And we didn't have a lot of big sessions. We did a lot of training and a lot of hard training, but I don't think I ever brought a sports drink to a run session, for example. Or for longer bike ride, we would do them fasted without breakfast, and we could ride for 3 hours and have a bar,
Okay.
a muesli bar after 3 hours into the 4th hour. So
And
there was
yeah, go on, sorry.
So it's just a lot of training where we were very, very depleted. And this came down to, I guess, the hypothesis of fat burning and weight management and, you know, being lean and light for being fast on the run course.
It's also quite an adrenal stress on the body though, isn't it? Always training fasted.
So what happens, I came down to the training camp 2007 in November the first time. And this is like my first step into elite sport. And I wanted to become a good athlete. I had just won the under 23 world champs.
Okay.
But I wanted to, like, you know, make the Olympics, and I wanted to become something better. And Darren was such a good coach, and it was very convincing, you know, I'm gonna make you the best athlete I can make. And I was on board with everything. And then of course weight is it is a part of being an elite athlete. So I never view myself as having had an eating disorder, but I definitely paid a lot of attention and thought into it in terms of not wanting to gain weight but to get leaner. And the first year, if you cut down a bit of calories, you lose weight, right? You train and you eat less and you lose weight. But doing the same thing the second year and the third year, it was more and more difficult. And it was just harder to get lean. And my body felt like, you know, it was just, you know, getting a little bit bigger and bigger every year. And it was harder and harder. In 2012, I came down to the camp, trained for a month, and then I weighed 67 kilos. And say my race weight at the London Olympics was probably 59 kilos. That's a big difference. And I didn't feel fit. I didn't feel like an athlete. And I was trying really, really hard, as in not eating much at all. And in my head, I was like, I don't know what else I can do. I can't eat less. I'm still training, and I kept getting injured as well. So then you can't run, and then you have to eat even less. And it was just this like difficult, where I didn't know what to do anymore.
So what did you do? Yeah,
then we ended up taking some blood tests, and my thyroid levels were really, really bad. So I have a dysfunctional thyroid. And I started to get some, what do you call it? We call it Levaxine. You probably have a different name in English. What you treat thyroid disease with.
So it's thyroid medication. So
yeah, exactly.
levothyroxine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was a game changer for me, because I got so much more energy. And I lost a bit of weight, and then I could eat a bit more, and I got even more energy, and I was losing weight, running better. And so like between December 2011 and June 2012, I went from 67 to 59 kilos. And the run shape at the Olympics was the best ever. But I think the point where I'm not sure I have like a proper thyroid dysfunction. I think I just really mishandled my whole hormone system with the amount of training and not eating enough and looking after myself, and the amount of stress also being that environment. Like we raced the World Series from, 2008-9 was the first year of the World Series where I got second. Then I got third the next year, and I was always at the top level of the competition. And then you have all the Olympic qualifications and everything around it. So of course it's a very, very stressful environment. And then you have staying lean, racing hard, competing, you train with a group of girls that are among like the absolute best in the world. So every training session, you kind of have to show up with your best attitude and the best that you have with you. So of course, it's a very, very stressful couple of years on my body that led to my thyroid not working so well.
Yeah. Because
I mean,
yeah, go on. Sorry.
So and what the doctors told me is like, oh, let's just medicate it and then you're fine and you can continue the same way as before. So at the time, I didn't really change anything apart from adding the medication. The problem was after 2012, I just kept getting injured and injured and injured, and getting to the 2016 Olympics was just was just a big struggle, even trying to get a race together to get enough points to qualify. So I think I was actually the very last name to make the Olympic qualification into Rio. And it was on a hair that I got into the Swedish team as well and actually got to race. And then afterwards I got a Achilles operation that had me out for a year. And then there was like a hip issue that stopped another season. And then I started with cycling instead. So I just rode my bike for 2 years on a professional level because I was so sick and tired of not being able to run, because I felt my body was so fragile. It just kept breaking down.
So when did you start to make changes to the way you eat, the way you trained, and I don't know what other lifestyle changes?
Yeah, so I had in end of 2019, I contacted this German coach who coached Sebastian Kienle and Laura Philipp. It's actually the husband of Laura Philipp, so they were a very tight team. Because I wanted to get back into triathlon and I wanted to do a long distance triathlon. And he was very holistic in his training. And I came from a stint with 2 years of training with a Norwegian team. The Norwegians that are now super famous and winning Olympics and Hawaii and everything that you can win. They're also very famous for training many hours and a lot of double threshold and LT1. So I had done that for 2 years. So actually adding up my training hours to the biggest volume that I ever done in my career. So we were around 30 hours per week, big sessions. Got really strong, especially for the bike, but just never got a race together. And Philip came in and was like, whoa, okay, you're an older athlete, you're very injured. You've been training so much for so many years, and especially these last 2 years with the Norwegians have been insane in terms of volume and intensity. So he pulled the volume down. So for like a couple of months, I was not doing a ride over 2 hours. And the intensity in it was like sprints. So I would have a 5-second sprint every 6 minutes and just doing stuff to get my system to fire again and not just be like a big diesel, but getting the rest and then getting the nervous system to work hard. And then COVID hit, right?
Okay, yes.
So that year I had no stress from races. I had no race schedule or anything that I had to do, but I had a year of just working with Philip and slowly building back my strength. And I spent a bit of time with Philip and Laura where I could see, and I think this is a game changer for me because I lived with them for a couple of weeks and I saw what Laura did for food and what she was eating and what she was training and the amount of food she was eating. But really good food, the quality of food and the love in preparation. And that kind of made me see that it's possible to be healthy and the body is happy. We also talked a lot about hormone system and menstrual cycle and getting off, I had an IUD for many years. It's like, I want you to get rid of it and want you to get your menstrual cycle back. And if you have that back, that's also a sign that your body is, happy and it's working and it's fueled.
Yes.
And you get into Ironman racing and it's all about fueling. It's about not blowing up. So it's about fueling in training. It's about fueling when outside training. And you start to measure stuff with Super Sapiens and you get the continuous glucose monitors. So you get all these tools where it's about getting the body to be happy and strong. And not like trying to just shred weight and be fast. And that was the game changer where it allowed me to get back into sport properly again.
Okay, fantastic. So what sort of, as an example, what sort of changes dietary wise what were you having, say, for breakfast before, if we having breakfast at all, or the healthy changes that Laura sort of introduced you to? Have you got some examples of?
So she would always do like a big bowl of like oats or mixed grains. You fill it up with fruit, some nut butter, some Greek yogurt, and start your day with that.
And previously, before then, you would be still having no breakfast, or had you changed that by then?
Well, so prior we did a lot of like fasted morning runs, and I think getting rid of the fasting was good for me to use the calories burn in the shadow of carbohydrates or whatever saying it is, to always make sure that the body has something to burn. But it also, as in like the amount of veggies and quality carbohydrates that she was eating, and to see it more as this is something good for the body, not something you should try to stay away from.
Yeah, so it's
Like
nourishing the body, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hugely demanding what you're doing, the stress on the body and the training, psychological stress and the physical stress.
And also adding fat, more and more fat to the diet.
Okay.
The coconut oils and avocados. I also worked with a dietitian in Sweden regarding my glucose levels.
Okay. Did you see dysregulation in your glucose?
Yes.
Yes, that's really interesting actually, because you assume that enduro athletes generally will have good glucose, but actually type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance in athletes and endurance athletes is remarkably common. And
apparently I have like what do you call like opposite diabetes too.
One?
No, like when
You're going low, you mean?
So what the body does, it like shifts the glucose really quickly from the blood to the muscles.
So sort of reactive hypoglycemia.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I get really low blood sugar quickly and often.
Okay.
So when we first started to measure, this is before the Rio Olympics. I think it was around 2014. I had so much time below what they would call the green zone. Majority, the highest percentage of the time in like below, on, or above would be below. But then I would have some time above and very little time in the green zone, which in Sweden would be defined between 4 and 6 millimole.
Okay. So were you eating more regularly then to help address that, or what have you done to?
So what she then tried to do was to up all my carbohydrates into my training sessions.
Yeah.
So really like use the sessions to take on carbohydrates. All my biking, running, always have like carbs on the swimming pool, but then outside to be a bit more careful and make sure that the carbohydrates that I eat have a low GI, and always adding like nuts and avocado and fat to the meals.
But you've always got your protein and your fats.
And that made a big difference. And also the order, actually, like I played around with it. So if you're hungry and you start to have a sandwich, but then you better start with having like nuts if you want to nibble on something, and like just start in that, like also for breakfast to start with the egg, and then you go to the porridge.
That every day. Yeah. It's a really good tip. Yes.
So that kind of allowed me to understand how my body works, and I have to be very careful in racing and training, because if I have a gel, I kind of need to continue, because otherwise I get a little riser and then I get a big dip, and it's very hard to come out of the dip.
So what would you do then in an Ironman, well, I suppose in training, and because you're going to mimic that for your racing, do you do gels on the bike, or do you do real food? How do you?
I do mainly sports drink, but I would have 3 or 4 gels during the bike. So one at the end of every hour. And I would also use them in transition.
Yeah.
But racing is different for me because I take on so much.
Yeah.
So it's like the body don't have time to come down, and you're also working hard. So your body is like firing. So I never had a low reading during a race. I always had like medium to high. I think the problem in training is that you very rarely take on 100 grams per hour in training, because you're like, oh, I'm not going to ride for 3 hours and it's not that hard. You take a gel because you feel a little bit, fatigued or that you need it, and then you don't continue. And eventually you find yourself into a hole and you don't understand why your legs fell off.
And
so
you
it's
can
more being
train
aware.
Yeah, and you can train the gut as well, because it is quite hard to do. I hate taking gels in training, but if you get your gut used to it, the receptors that they're called the GLUT4 receptors that take up the glucose, they actually, you increase them. So then in a race, the theory being that you can actually take more on more quickly as well if you have trained as you will race. So that you upregulate the receptors that take the glucose up.
So I had one of the last big training sessions before Hawaii when I was back in Sweden. We had ramped up. I started with 2 30-minutes at Ironman pace, or like just above Ironman pace, more like in between half Ironman and Ironman. And then there was 3 half hours, 4 half hours, and then I had a 4-hour time trial.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And that was within a 5-hour ride.
Wow.
And I was a bit, stressed in the morning, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna weigh my sports drink because I need to take Reese Nutrition today, everything that I had. And it's a lot of scoops. If you're gonna scoop, it's like, I'm gonna weigh it. And I miscalculated, but I wasn't aware. So I was convinced that I had exactly what I should have. And I finished everything on the plan. I was super happy, hit my best. I actually had watts that I would come back with a 70.3 race for the 4-hour time trials. I came back in 235 watts for 4 hours, which is my highest ever by far.
Amazing.
And I actually didn't feel so bad when I came back home. And my boyfriend was like, do you want some dinner? It's like, no, I'm going to shower first and I'm fine. And then I was like, I started to think about the sports drinks and like, how much was that really like? Because I wanted to write it down in my training diary. And I had taken on 138 grams per hour.
Wow.
For the 5 hours of riding, because it was warm up and cool down as well.
Yeah.
That made me kind of recalculate the amount of carbs I also could take on during a race, because before that I'd worked out of 90 grams per hour, and I've been training at 100. But then if I can tolerate 140 almost for 5 hours, I can probably be more around 100 or a bit more in the race as well.
Yeah. And you didn't have any gut issues on that?
No. I felt a little bit like, not nauseous, but I just didn't feel like I wanted to have something more at the end of the ride, which is probably.
Did you have to run after that or not? Because
No.
I wonder if you'd run, that might have maybe, I don't know, who knows, but.
And also this was Sweden, and I think I had a short sleeve and a vest on, but it was not warm.
Okay.
So it's maybe between 15 and 20 degrees, which is very, very different again from racing in, 30 with a high humidity. And I feel like in colder conditions, your gut works a bit better than in very hot conditions.
Yeah. No, the heat definitely causes can be a problem, can't it? Yeah. So have you, as a result of that, do you now take on more when you're training?
So then, I upped the goal from 90 to 100.
Yeah.
Because also Hawaii is hot, Ironman Western Australia is hot, and you don't want to be like, the question is if I can use much more. If I've been racing well of 90 before, I can probably up it to, is it like worthwhile pushing it? When the whole system is so stressed with everything else that comes with racing.
And you add in more dehydration potentially.
Yeah.
No, that's fascinating. And so what about in terms of, so you had your sort of your change of fueling. Did you change, you then actually, what we should say, so you came back after that with the fastest ever bike split in an Ironman, is that right? That's amazing.
That was Western Australia, end of last year.
Yeah, fantastic.
Then so I raced 3 Ironman World Champs, and I've been 5th, 6th, and 9th.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of consistent in the top 10 in the world, or like around between 5th and 10th.
Yeah.
My running still is not good enough for the top 3 places.
Okay.
I need to shave off a bit of time on the marathon.
And how about your swim? Do you feel, is that you? Because wasn't the swim your weakest initially? Didn't have a swimming background. Am I right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I only swimming when I was 16, but Darren actually got me to swim really, really well. And from 2010, 11, I was almost always front pack in the World Series races. So I wasn't bad. I made the front pack in Rio. And coming into long course, that means that you're swimming really well in long course because the level is a little bit lower than in the WTS races. Saying that, however, because I swim by myself, and when you calculate the training time, you get much more out of, you know, riding faster or running faster compared to swimming faster. So I have been a little bit, not lazy, but I've been just kind of keeping the swim in place. And the way the sport is going now, where the swim has gone faster, I probably would need to up the level a little bit to sit in a faster pack. So now I'm like, I just been a little bit too comfortable and think there's a bit of gain to be made if I can come out with the slightly faster people.
Okay. So what about have you made any lifestyle changes post sort of 2019, 2020 in terms of not getting worn out and keeping that performance, not being where you were, where, you know, getting injured, and just making sure you're listening to yourself? Or do you feel the fueling is that's the trick that was missing, as it were?
Well, also the years between 2007 or actually 2003 and 2012, I was living out of a suitcase on tour with coaches in Australia, or you go to Davos and you just like keep traveling the world following the circuit. And then I went back to Sweden for the off-season break, or to visit mom 2 weeks in spring between two races. And after London, I was like, I need to find my footing. I need to get a place by myself. So I moved to Stockholm, and then I met my boyfriend and we moved together. In 2021, so the year after COVID, we bought a house and we got a dog, and we have a nice it's a beautiful dog.
It's gorgeous.
We also got like a nice training studio. So I guess like my training now is much more settled. Also doing long course, I'm not dependent on other people the same way. I don't have to go to camps to get that like last bit of speed to join in with others. So I traveled a lot less. So, you know, you have a house, you have a garden, you travel less, you spend time with a dog. And I guess that's all things that makes you a little bit more grounded as a human being as well.
That's nice. What about testing and nutrient status and supplementation stuff? Do you get, I mean, obviously I know you talked about thyroid testing and things, but do you get blood tests done regularly? Do they, I mean, Sweden, I've definitely been thinking like vitamin D, but also obviously as any athlete, but a pro triathlete, all of those sort of nutrient statuses, is that something that gets looked at?
Yeah, so I have a doctor I work with, and it's maybe not like super regularly, and he's a normal medical doctor, so not like into nutrition or specific like nutrition testing, but we would always like check the basic stuff that you get from a blood panel. Most times it would actually be good. I know one time I came back with like magnesium should be upped, and that was after like a winter with a lot of indoor training. So obviously you do a lot of sweating when you on Swift, sitting inside. So we try to keep that with the thyroid and the HB and everything, you know, the blood values good. And normally I don't have a lot of problems, like everything always showed up pretty good. So I'm also aware of that, like a blood test doesn't tell you how your body really feels.
Yes. And also, I mean, certainly in the UK, so if you go to an NHS doctor, a standard, they'll look at, say for magnesium, they look at serum magnesium, not red blood cell magnesium. Serum magnesium is really tightly controlled. Red blood cell magnesium gives you a clearer idea of what's available at a cellular level. And again, UK, they probably won't look at T3, so your active thyroid hormone. They're only looking at TSH, maybe T4. And some of the ranges, NHS wise, are very wide, whereas optimal ranges are much more narrow. And you can't see everything in blood either. So certain B vitamins, you need to look at functional markers. But yeah, no, vitamin D is the one I was sort of thinking in terms of absolute minimum in terms of Sweden and sunlight and what you're getting, and you know the importance of that in terms of athletes. But yeah, so do you have quite an array of supplements that you take?
So vitamin D is a standard, and it's with me here as well.
Yeah.
I've been a bit like scared by all the doping warnings.
Yeah.
In Sweden, it's like a lot of warnings that it's very hard to control that market, so it has to be. But I have like just a normal multivitamin, vitamin C, like in Asia if I'm traveling or getting ready for a race. I also support the thyroid with selenium.
Selenium, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
selenium.
Zinc's another key one for
zinc. Yeah,
it would be a good one. Yeah.
So that would be like the basic ones.
Yeah. Fantastic. So are you're feeling, or if you feel recovered now? I know you said you were a bit under the weather last week.
Yeah, no, it's better now. It's actually my second infection this year. I had at my previous camp, I was sick for a week and a half as well.
Oh.
But I think my boyfriend was also sick he almost had it for 5 weeks. We wasn't able to train. So there's some nasty stuff going around that just takes a long time to get rid of.
So he's a triathlete as well?
He's a former biker that still trains a lot.
Okay.
So he's a good training partner.
Cool.
He doesn't swim very well though. There's one thing I get to have for myself.
Yeah. Good. Well, I don't think, is there anything else that you think is a really important message you would like to say to, sort of age groupers or competitive triathletes out there and listening to their body, lessons they should learn? One of the things I see a lot is people, age groupers, just pushing through, not missing a training session because it's in training peaks and it's set. They don't listen to their body. And I think that's one of the biggest. And then coming through as we get older, 40s, 50s, you begin to sort of really see the effects, and it becomes unsustainable. So I'm a huge advocate of listening to your body. Is there any particular message that you would really
Well, I think the cost of daily life always have to be taken into consideration. So if it's a day where there's stuff happening that you can't control, or there's things that you need to do to get your life to function for yourself or for your loved ones that are around you, don't forget that takes energy from you, and it doesn't mean that you also have to push through this training session, because a coach or whoever puts down the training sessions, they have no idea what you feel like. They just work from an optimal idea that you come home from work and you have a nap and then you feel ready to go, but that's probably not always the case. And if you look at the whole idea of training is about I'm sorry, I'm dropping the word, like the continuous part of training. Like you don't want to lose sessions, you want to add hours of hours.
Consistency, is that what you're...
Sorry, that was the word I was looking for. But it's also a part that if you push yourself too hard, then you might get sick or too tired. So you're not getting the consistency because it's going to cost you a couple of days. So sometimes being consistent is actually removing a session to keep the consistency the next day or the day after. So in the whole picture, you might feel like, oh, I'm meant to be consistent and I have to do all the sessions. But sometimes like removing one or making a session easier allows you to keep training in the long run. And that's where the magic is happening, right? So it's like adding the weeks and months on each other.
Big picture,
not like, so I by myself, like I even gone to the pool, been in the car, kind of fallen asleep and decided like, no, it's not for me today. I'm gonna drive home and keep resting, because I just like the whole push-up, getting in there, getting changed, getting in the water was like, I can't do it.
Yeah, I have
But
done the same thing.
the next
Yeah.
day you feel like, oh, now I actually want to swim and I'm ready for it, and my body feels happier and more refreshed.
Yeah. Now, I think that's really good advice. I talk about, to my clients, I talk about stress as in the total stress concept of physiological, so being deficient in magnesium, zinc, whatever it is, psychological and physical, and they're all received by the same part of the brain. And then you get the hypothalamus and signals to the pituitary, and then the link with the thyroid and the adrenal glands and the ovaries or gonads for men. And yeah, no, remembering that, you know, people who've got, you know, they've got children, you've got a full-time job, you're training, that load, that stress load is really big. And so yeah, people don't always recognize that as that, you know, it's all connected basically. So no, I think that's a really, really good advice. Thank you. Yeah. So best of luck in
Thank
your
you.
next race.
Thank you.
And in Nice. That's it.
Yeah.
That'll be exciting. Is it the first time women have raced in Nice?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the men, this whole thing started last year with different Ironman world champs, and the men started in Nice.
Yeah, because I know certainly for age groupers, it's become a little bit easier to qualify for that, because now a few of the 70.3s, you've got 5 places. In fact, 70.3 Sweden this year being one of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. To get a place.
That's a beautiful race.
I have entered it.
Yeah, I can really recommend
Yes.
it. Also, the Ironman is a very, very cool race experience.
Yeah, I'll have a look at that. I've done a few Ironman, but at the minute it's not on my radar. I like 70.3. It's more fits into my life quite well. It's quite, yeah, it's a nice distance. Anyway, best of luck.
Thank you so much.